Thank you to all of our newlyweds. Hey, after that game, some of them might need Marriage Matters. So if you want to hop onto our website, you can sign up for the marriage class just to work through your differences of the wrong answers. But no, we love being able to do that for you guys and open it up with some fun. So how's everyone doing this morning? Y'all doing good? Okay, awesome. It's really great that I'm here this morning. My family got hit with the plague this weekend in a major way. We were dropping like flies all weekend, so I am excited to be better and back here with you this morning. We are in our series called Power Couple, and this is our second week in the series. And last week, Dan kicked it off talking about the importance of good communication in a relationship. Telling us that communication is really the lifeblood of all relationships. And really throughout this series, really what we want to do is we want to bring some messages and some truths to all of us in this room that can help us take even another step toward having a healthy marriage. We believe that healthy marriages are so important, and we want to do whatever we can to help our married couples and our soon-to-be married couples on the path to having health in their marriages. And so here, as we kick it off this morning, I have a question to ask all of you in the room. How many of you here today would pay an insane amount of money to be able to read the mind of your significant other? Just to be able to read their mind, just to know what they're thinking. You don't ever have to guess. And then maybe there's some of you in here that are saying, I'll tell you what I would pay. I would pay an insane amount of money to never know what's going on in their mind because I don't want to know what they're thinking. But I mean, for real, how much easier would it be for us as couples if we had the ability to just read their mind? We never had to wonder. We never had to ask questions. We would just know, like the second we got engaged or the second we got married, we were zapped with this superpower that enabled us to know what they were thinking at any given moment. I mean, men, am I right? Wouldn't it be so much easier if you knew what the heck was going on in the mind of a woman? Wouldn't that make it a lot easier for you? I mean, think about the arguments that would be saved. Think about the frustration you would never have to walk through. Think about birthdays and Christmas gifts. You would never have to wonder if you were getting her something that she liked because you would just know. You would automatically know what it was that she really wanted. Or, and I say this, like, this is totally hypothetical. This is not based on anything I've ever experienced with Dan. But say you're wanting to go out to eat, right? And you're in the car and you're like, hey, honey, where do you want to go eat tonight? And she says, I don't care. And so you suggest about 25 different restaurants, and every single restaurant she says no to, but she doesn't care. But she doesn't want to go to any of the places that you suggested. So if you could just read her mind, you wouldn't even have to ask. You just get in the car and drive to the restaurant because you would already know what she wants to eat. I mean, how much easier would it be in our life if there was an app for that? We could just go to Siri and download the app, the mind reading app for our significant other, and we'd never have to face any of these issues ever again. And a lot of you ladies are sitting there going, wait a minute, he can't read my mind? Like, if he really loved me, he would know what I was thinking. He'd be able to look at me and tell what I wanted if he really, truly loved me. Or maybe some of you ladies are like, well, I don't need to read his mind because I am already aware of the main thing on his mind. And my husband would be like, yes and amen. I can tell you that's true. And see, we can all laugh at these stereotypical examples of men and women and things like that. But sometimes there can be some truth here. Relationships can be hard. And it can be hard when you do have to rely on communication and when you don't know what the other person is thinking and feeling all the time. It takes some work and some effort. And the bad news today is that you will never be able to read the mind of your spouse. Never. You'll never be able to read your spouse's mind. Okay, but the good news today is you don't have to read their mind in order to have a successful marriage. You don't have to. It's actually a whole lot easier and simpler than that. And what I want to talk about today, what I really want to lean into is an idea that is actually really simple, but if we could take this idea and put it into practice, I really truly believe that it has the potential to totally revolutionize our marriages. I believe it has the potential to bring us into more of a place of health in our relationships, take us out of the survival mode that sometimes we can tend to get into in our marriages, and take us into a place where we're not just getting through, we're not just surviving it, but where our marriages can really flourish. Because really, that's what we're all looking for. We're all looking for marriages and relationships in which we can really flourish. I mean, don't we all want to have healthy marriages where we can find fulfillment? Isn't that something that all of us really want to have? And by fulfillment, I'm not talking about where your spouse meets every single emotional need that you have. Because last week, Dan talked about how really we can put a lot of unrealistic and unhealthy expectations on our spouses to meet all of these needs that God was really the one that was meant to fill. But yet we look to our spouse to fill those things and we end up disappointed. So I'm not talking about fulfillment in that sense, but I'm talking about fulfillment in which your marriage is a place that you find value and meaning, where you're more than just roommates, but you really look at your marriage as something that's worth investing into, where you find fulfillment. And this idea we're going to talk about today, it's a little bit counterintuitive, and that's why I think oftentimes we can tend to miss it. But I really believe that if we can be intentional about it, that it can breathe so much life and health into our relationships. And it's connected to the core component that every relationship needs to flourish, and that is to feel loved. To feel loved. I think every single person in a marriage has a need and a desire to feel loved by their spouse. If I went across this room and asked every single married couple, I don't think anybody would say that you have no desire to feel loved by your spouse. I think that's something that all of us want. We all want to feel loved. And what happens is there can be some problems that occur in marriages when this is absent. I mean, if you think about maybe friends of yours or anybody in your life that has gone through problems in their marriage, or maybe you've heard stories of people that have gone through a divorce, and oftentimes what you hear is, we don't love each other anymore, or I don't feel loved by so-and-so. And when that need isn't being met, when that desire isn't being met, when we don't feel love, it's really easy for that marriage to start to slip away and to start to crumble around us. Because the thing is, we feel loved when we are shown love. We feel loved when we are shown love. And if that is lacking, it's really difficult for us to feel love. Because saying I love you is really great. And we all need to hear that. And we all want to hear that from our spouse. But just saying I love you to someone and not backing it up with tangible action doesn't actually show that you love that person. We can look at 1 John 3:18, and it says this: "Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let's show the truth by our actions." That's how people know that we love them, is by our actions. And now obviously this verse in context, it's not just speaking to married couples, but what's interesting is the word love here in the Greek is the word agape. And agape refers to the type of love that God has for us, this unconditional love. And if you see it here when it's speaking about the way that we love all people, love everyone, but then it's the same word, that same word agape is used in Ephesians 5 when Paul is writing in this letter to married couples, giving them instructions. When it tells the husband and wife the way that they should love each other, it's that agape kind of love. So this doesn't only apply to just how we love the world or how we love our neighbor or how we love other Christians, but this also applies how we need to love our spouse. We need to love our spouse with a love that has action behind it. Because real love is accompanied by action. Real love is accompanied by action, and we see this in the way that God showed his love for us. I mean, 1 John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave. He put action behind it. He showed us how much he loved us in that he gave his son. The way that Jesus lived his life, if you look at the way that he spent time with his disciples, when there were people that needed to be healed, he physically touched them. He welcomed people in, gave them a place to belong. He put action to that love, and we have to do the same thing in our marriages. If we want our spouses to feel loved, we have to be willing to put action behind that. I love it when Dan tells me that he loves me. I want him to continue telling me that, but when he shows me he loves me with his actions, that's when I really believe that he loves me. Because he could tell me all day long that he loved me, but if he never put action to it, slowly, I would start to wonder if he really did. Like, that's great, you can say you love me, but how are you going to show me that you do? So if this is the case, if the way that we feel loved is by being shown love, how does that work? How do we ensure that we are showing love to our spouse? Because this can definitely be an area of struggle for a lot of us. I know it has been for us at times. I'm sure it has been for many of you in this room. I mean, have you ever felt like you were doing all of these things to show love to your spouse, but they just didn't seem to appreciate it? Or have you ever felt like you wished that your spouse was better at showing love to you? Or maybe you've tried to find ways to show love to your spouse, but it never really has the outcome that you were hoping for. There seems to be like this disconnect. You're like doing all of these things, but they don't quite get it. You feel like you're somehow missing that mark. See, the reason why this happens and the reason why this is hard is because every person is different and every person experiences felt love in different ways. We don't always feel love in the same way that we tend to show love. And the way that I feel most loved isn't the way that Dan feels most loved. There are things that I need to do for him that show him that I love him, but those same things aren't what's going to make me feel the most loved. We have to start by understanding how our husbands and wives receive love. And there's actually a really great book that was written about this idea. I have a copy here. It's called The 5 Love Languages. Has anybody in here ever read The 5 Love Languages? It's a fair amount of you. Really, really great book. And basically, the author, Gary Chapman, what he does is he's done studies on, behavior and love and relationships. And basically, he breaks it down to that there are 5 different ways that people experience felt love in their life. And I actually read this book for the first time when I was single. I was in Bible school and I was single. It did prove very helpful when I finally gave in to all of Dan's incessant begging and I finally said, yes, I'll go out with you. And this book actually has really, really helped our relationship. It's really helped our marriage. The concepts that Gary Chapman writes about in this book have really changed the way that we've learned to show love to one another. So the author breaks it down and says there are 5 what he calls love languages, ways that people experience love. And here's the 5. I'm going to kind of break them down for you right now. The first one is we've got quality time. So some people experience felt love when their spouse spends a lot of quality time with them. That's where they most feel loved. The second one is words of affirmation. So compliments, words of encouragement, things like that are what makes the person with that primary love language, that's what makes them feel most loved. The third one is gifts. Some people feel loved when they're given gifts, whether big or small. The fourth one is acts of service. So doing things for that person, maybe around the house or in the yard, maybe, bringing them lunch or doing things that actually require acts of service. And then the fifth one is physical touch. And this does not just refer like intimacy in the bedroom. Like it actually means like, holding hands or just a touch on the arm or rubbing their shoulders or in some way that physical touch is what makes that person with that primary love language feel the most loved. And the idea behind this whole concept of love languages is for each person in the relationship to figure out what their primary love language is. And then you have a conversation and communicate that to your spouse so that way you know how to best show love to one another. I would highly encourage you, if you are in a relationship or even if you're not and you hope to be someday or if you're married, I would highly encourage all of you guys to get a copy of this book. Is there anybody in here that would love to have a copy right now? Here you go. There you go. Yep. Okay, so the reason the concept of this book is so important is because most people have a tendency to show love in the ways that they most feel loved. So for example, say that you're in here and your primary love language happens to be gifts. if you look at the way that you express love to others, chances are, without really like taking an assessment and like realizing that other people have different love languages, your tendency will be to give people gifts to show them that you love them, because that's how you most feel loved. That's our natural tendency, is to do that. But the problem is that if receiving gifts isn't your love language, someone can give you gifts all day long and you'll appreciate it and you'll think the stuff is nice and whatever, but it doesn't make you feel loved because that's not your primary love language. See, for Dan and I, being aware of this has really helped us so much. For instance, my primary love language is acts of service. Any other acts of service people out there? Can I get a witness? I'm telling you. For me, having a clean and in order house is really important to me. I just really love things being clean. I feel less stressed when my house is clean. I enjoy being in my home more. I can't stand clutter. I probably throw away too much stuff. Like, y'all, I don't even still have my wedding dress. I was like, nope, I get rid of everything. I just like things to be clean and in order. And so because of this, if Dan chooses to help clean something for me, man, that is like one of the biggest ways that he can show me he loves me. And he does think I'm a little bit neurotic. I call it cleanliness. He says it's neurotic. I really am obsessed with clean floors. I sweep a few times a day and sometimes mop a couple times a day. It's really bad, you guys. But when you have dark wood floors, every single speck of dog hair and every piece of lint like shows up all the time. And so I'm a little bit obsessed about it. I get that. But I just feel better about my life when my floors in my house are clean. And so because Dan knows this about me, if he like cleans the bathroom or like, does some laundry, or my goodness, unloads the dishwasher, like there is nothing sexier than a man in the kitchen cleaning the dishes. Like that makes me feel so loved. And some of you guys, you might be going, what's the big deal? And some of us ladies, especially us acts of service people, we're saying, we call that chore play. Like whatever you want to see happen in the bedroom starts in the kitchen. Get out that vacuum and man, it's going to be a good time. Okay. I'm telling you. So when Dan does those kinds of things for me, it makes me feel loved. And here's the thing, it's not the actual act of cleaning that like makes my love tank feel full. It's not like I see that folded pile of laundry, I'm like, ooh baby, that laundry makes me feel so loved. Like, no, it's that he recognizes that matters to me. And so when he takes the initiative to take some of that load off of me, I feel seen. I feel like he cares about what I care about. Thus, I feel loved by him. And for him, his primary love language is words of affirmation. So it's interesting because this whole concept of we tend to show love in the ways that we most feel loved, I do that all the time, even still. Like, I'll like make him breakfast or like organize his dresser drawers, or like have all of his laundry done all the time. Okay, so that's kind of a lie. I hate, laundry is like my nemesis. It's like, babe, do I have any clean boxers? I don't know, go check the pile of laundry on the laundry room floor. I don't know, your guess is as good as mine. I hate laundry. But the other things, making him meals or, putting his clothes away or doing things for him like that. And the thing is, he appreciates those things. It's not like he doesn't want me to make him breakfast or doesn't want me to help fold his laundry when I get to it, but that's not the way he most feels loved. When he most feels loved is when I come to him and tell him how proud I am of him. Or I tell him, man, thank you so much for being so engaged in our kids' lives. Or man, you are leading this church so well. I'm so proud of you for doing that. Like it's when I affirm him verbally is when he most feels loved. So we have to start understanding that we're going to have to get to be a little bit intentional about the way that we show love to our spouse. Be intentional about the fact that I receive love in a completely different way than he receives love. And if I want him to feel loved, I'm going to have to learn to speak his love language, so to speak. And here's the thing, I'm not always awesome at this. I got to tell you, I sometimes struggle, and I sometimes don't affirm him verbally as much as I should. And the truth of the matter is, it's really hard sometimes. It's hard to show love to our spouse in the ways that they best feel loved. And it's also hard because sometimes we tend to want to give love when we feel the most loved, and sometimes, quite frankly, we aren't feeling real loved in our relationship. So what our natural instinct is to do is to say, you know what, tell you what, as soon as they start showing me love and I start feeling loved, then I'll start showing them love. But if we do that, we could be waiting a really long time. Because here's the thing, in marriage, in relationships like this, isn't really what love is about is laying down our own rights and desires and needs in order to put them first? Isn't that the love that God has for us, the love that Jesus modeled for us? Isn't that the core of all of it? Is to learn to lay down our pride, to lay down what we want most, what we desire most, and instead to focus our attention on what's best for them. So what we need to do is we have to take it upon ourselves to say, you know what? I may not be feeling really loved right now, but I'm going to choose to go first. And I'm going to choose to show my spouse love in the way that they feel loved, even though I'm not feeling that loved right now. I'm going to choose to, like Dan talked about last week, go to the back of the line, and I'm going to choose to put them first and to show them love first. If we want to see our marriages and our relationships flourish, we have to be willing to lay down our pride and be the one who goes first, not just waiting for them to go. Because here's the thing, what usually happens, and I'm not saying it happens every time, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take effort and commitment, just like everything else in our marriages does. But when we're each doing this, if I make it my mission to do whatever I can to lay down my pride and my own rights and my own desires and to show Dan love in the way that he best feels loved, and then if he makes it his mission to do the same for me, pretty soon you've got this beautiful picture of love being reciprocated in our marriage. And we're both feeling fulfilled and we're both feeling loved. But we can't just sit there and say, I'm going to wait for them to do it. We have to be the one that's willing to put it into action. And I promise you that the results are going to be worth it every time. Because when we're actively showing love to one another in our marriages, we are contributing to meet one of the other's greatest needs, to feel loved. I want to read 1 John 3:18 for you one more time. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let's show the truth by our actions. Can we just imagine for a minute what our marriages would look like if we each made it our mission to put our love into action every single day? Can you imagine the changes that you could, and maybe your marriage is great. Maybe it's not like, maybe it's not like you're having problems or anything, but can you imagine how much greater things would be if you would each of you make it your individual mission to put love into action every single day in some way? Maybe there's some marriages in here that are struggling, and I'm not saying that this is like the cure-all for everything, but it could be a step. It definitely couldn't hurt. I think this could move you forward towards that healthy marriage that you're wanting and praying for. If we could all make that our commitment to put love into action every single day, I think our marriages would completely change. And how much healthier and fulfilling would our marriages be if we found just one practical way every day to show our spouse love in the way they most feel loved? If I made it my mission, even if I have to put a reminder in my phone, because sometimes, let's be real, sometimes that's what it takes. To put a reminder in my phone that goes off every day that says, okay, today, encourage Dan in this area. Don't forget to tell him what a great job he's doing with the kids. Don't forget to tell him how much you appreciate these things that he's doing. To remind ourselves every single day, just one thing every day, to actively show our spouse that we love them. I think our marriages could be revolutionized, completely change everything for us. Here, as we get ready to close, the band's going to play one more song, and we want to do this as a time for you to have a chance to reflect on what you've heard and learned today. A chance for you to not walk out of these doors having said, oh, that was cool, I learned a couple things, but to really focus in and say, okay, how am I going to apply it? Because if we come and sit here week in and week out and we hear a bunch of information, but we never take it out those doors and do anything with it, then we are wasting our time. Because the point of absorbing truth like this is so that our lives look different, so that our marriages look different. So right now, while the band is playing this song, maybe what you need to do is you need to sit down with your spouse or with your fiance or your significant other, and maybe you need to have a conversation about this whole love language idea. And we're gonna keep them up here just for a second so you can kind of look them over in case you've forgotten what the different ones were. But maybe you need to say, okay, this is how I most feel loved. And your spouse needs to tell you that. And then maybe you talk about ways that you tell your spouse, hey, when you do this for me, it makes me feel loved. Or you ask the question, how can I better love you practically on a daily basis? And have those open, honest conversations in order to get this ball rolling. Or maybe what you need to do is, while the band's playing this song, maybe hop on Amazon and order the book. Order the book because you want to learn more about this and you really want to thrive in this area. What's also available too is we found there's a 5 love languages app that you can download. That's awesome. You can take the assessment. It's all free. You can take the assessment to figure out what your love language is. There's challenges that will send you a reminder every day of like a challenge of a way that you can show love to your spouse depending on what their love language is. Maybe you download this app and the two of you get together and start figuring out ways that you can work on this on a daily basis. And hey, single people in the room, what's awesome is this app also has a complete section for singles. So you can get on there and take the assessment, because here's the thing, if you hope to be in a relationship someday, it's really helpful to be self-aware and to know these things about yourself. So as you get into a relationship, you're like one step ahead of the game. And you already know some practical ways that you can bring health into that relationship. Because here's the thing, we aren't mind readers. So good communication is the key. So during this time, take some time with your spouse. Really talk through this idea. And then let's make it our mission that, you know what, we're not gonna be people that just merely say to our spouses, I love you, but that we're gonna put action behind it. That we're gonna be willing to put them first. We're gonna be willing to go to the back of the line. We're gonna be willing to go first for them because our marriages are worth it and because our spouses are worth it. Amen? Let me go ahead and pray for you real quick.